Hi everyone, this is Eald'narche coming at you from the break zone with another deck tech video. This one going over the unblockable list that Jenny Passingham piloted to a top 8 finish at the Newport Regional in South Wales. So the point of this deck is to go in with small forwards, hopefully get some haste, go in for some unblockable damage, and just try to get there in the early turn, early to mid game. Let's go over some of the cards. Starting off with Tsukinowa, who is unblockable, who cannot be blocked by forwards of cost 3 or more. And you do have edge in this deck, so it might just come in with haste for just a 1 cost. So it's easy to remove, but if your opponent, you have so many forwards that your opponent should really try to remove, otherwise they're going to take 1 point here, 1 point there, and with so many threats that you're putting out on the field, it might just be too much for your opponent to deal with. Next up, we've got Yuffie, who can't be blocked by forwards of cost 3 or more. Edge, who can't be blocked by forwards of 4 or more, of cost 4 or more, and he actually counts for the trigger for Tsukinowa, as we spoke about earlier. And if he deals damage to your opponent, activate all backups you control. So there's a couple of engines in this deck that will actually have you reactivate your backups. One of them is Edge, but another one that's pretty reliable we'll speak about later on, which is actually No as one of your backups. You have 3 copies of it in this deck, and if you really need to, there's also Ashura. Next up, we've got Tifa. So if you play her first turn, she is technically unblockable, because your opponent might not have if your opponent has no blockers, no forwards on the field, she is technically unblockable, but not really. I mean, she's just going for damage, but she will act as if she is. Keep in mind that if you do fetch her with Zangan, she doesn't get a double haste bonus or anything like that, but hey, so you might actually just search her out to use a special from the 5 CP Tifa legendary from Opus 2, which we haven't seen in a long time. Next up, we've got Zidane. So part of that unblockable package since Opus 1, and he is tough to deal with. I mean, your opponent cannot target him with summons or abilities, so normally you want a blanket effect. We haven't seen as many of those around lately, so that he might just be a problem for your opponent, especially if they play larger forwards. But since Opus 3 there's been a lot of 3 CP forwards that are very efficient, effective, and useful for decks. And usually they come in at 7,000 power, so he has not been as popular lately, but you do have a couple ways to deal with forwards. And I mean, it might just be a case of, hey, your opponent just has 1 forward you have to deal with, because if all of the rest of his are 4 or above, then you'll just be able to go through anyways. Next up, we've got Adele. She's a new addition to the blockable package, 3 cost haste, and you can make her unblockable for 1 win CP with all the other reactivating of backups. That's not even a problem for you to use, and it's not going to set you back at all. Lan has been part of that unblockable package as well, and there's just so many threats in this deck that just come in early and are so cheap that if they use all their removal for the other forwards, they won't be able to deal with land. And since you have no big power boost in this deck besides Godot, for the most part, if your opponent ever tries to get just a little bit too big, puts a plus 1,000 power backup out there to boost his forwards by plus 1,000 power, then most of their forwards will just be too big to deal with land. Next up, we've got a new addition as well, Nana Migo, and she can be blocked by forwards of 4 that cost 4 or more. And if she actually hits your opponent, there's this fun effect where you take the top 2 cards of their deck, and if they're the same element, you will draw a card. So there's a possibility that you're playing against, let's say, Model Lightning or something like that, where you will probably hit 2 cards of the same element, and at that point you will get to draw a card and be able to just keep going with your rush. Next up, we've got Zell. Haven't seen him used actually ever, so it's nice to see an old card being used for something fun. And he gets to pick a forward of cost 3 or less the opponent controls, and it cannot block this turn. Next, we've got Godot. He's on curve for drop AK, and there's a couple of forwards that you have that are of cost 2, so that little power boost is going to help in case, let's say, an opponent does Illua special or a Cyclops or Cagnasso and stuff like that, little things that do power reduction, then Godot will actually keep them out of the range of, let's say, playing a Tomberries and sacking it to give a forward minus 4,000 power, so that, for example, your Edge, Tifa, and Zidane will just be a little bit too big. And yes, I am aware Zidane cannot be targeted, but that would still be effective against Illua or Cyclops. Oh, and one more thing, being able to give haste to your forward is pretty useful. So first main phase, play your forward. If you already have Godot and you can attack with him, go ahead, attack with Godot, give the other forward haste. And with Nono, you'll be able, Nono and Ashura and Edge, for example, you'll be able to reactivate your backups and play another forward during the second main phase. So that's pretty fun. Next up, we've got Camelot. So this is not the Dark Earth Camelot package that you think about, but this deck has another fun engine, which is Paradise City, the Paradise Special from Eald'narche. So Camelot will be able to go and fetch just that for you, as well as being able to give itself protection from an element on your following main phase 1. But keep in mind that if you draw Eald'narche first, you might want to hold back on playing Eald'narche out. You probably want to hold on to the first copy, play your Camelot, search out your second Eald'narche, and then you can play that Eald'narche and Paradise use a Paradise Special. Otherwise, you'll be trying to get 2 Dark Forwards into play at the same time, and while having Camelot be a Dark Forward, your first Dark Forward on the field, and being able to change this element is good, playing your Eald'narche first is going to actually set you back, since you will now be stuck with the Camelot in your hand and not be able to search out your second copy of Eald'narche for that special. Next up, we've got Tifa. You've got 2 copies of the 5 cost, who is on curve at 9k, but you'll also be able to search out the smaller version of Tifa of herself if you would like to use her special by using your 1 copy of Zangin as well. But if she attacks, she can pick any one forward, and it cannot block this turn. But that special actually is very effective, since your deck has so many forwards of cost 3 or less that are hard to block, or most of them would say that they can't be blocked by forwards of cost 4 or more, if not 3 or more. And with Pycelian on top of that, for example, and Tifa special, that would just wreck house. I mean, you'll probably be able to go in for a couple points of damage, which might just be enough, since you probably dealt them a couple of points of damage to begin with your other forwards prior to trying to use her special. That's Eald'narche right here, and you really want Eald'narche for that Paradise Special. Taking another turn might just be enough for you to go over the top, and your opponent might not have enough resources to deal with it. Next up, going over summons, Ashura can do all kinds of tricks. If you're playing against ice, you can go ahead and choose 2 of your forwards and activate them. So if they get dull frozen, you're not too worried about that with Ashura. Being able to reactivate your backups to play shenanigans, to just play some more things, that's really up to you. But also, being able to choose 1 character across 2 or less when Breakzone added to your hand is pretty useful, since all of your monsters, as well as the majority of your forwards, are actually of cost 2 or less. Next up, we've got Ifrit. So if some of your smaller forwards are being blocked by things that are 6k, so your forwards that say that they cannot be blocked by forwards of 3 or more means that they can only be blocked by forwards of cost 2 or less, and most forwards of that cost would actually be 6,000 power or below, and Ifrit is enough to deal with them. In case they have things that are slightly larger, like let's say a green dragon, you go ahead and save that other Ifrit that's not able to deal enough damage to remove it, and you can pitch it to this one so that it would deal 10,000 damage. Next up, we're going to go over some backups. We've got 2 of the different evokers that only cost 1 CP, 1 for fire and 1 for wind. So the cool thing about this is that if you get one of these evokers in your hand and then the only backup in your hand at that time, a first in play of evoker is not going to set you back very much. And if you actually draw it later on, then it'll only cost you 1 CP in order to play it out. So if you, for example, already have like a ninja as a backup, your second turn play might just be a evoker, for example. I mean, I would rather go a little more aggressive, but in terms of backup play, you could definitely do that. Go from 1-2 CP backup into an evoker. Save yourself your cards, especially since you have the majority of your deck is very aggressive. You only have 15 backups. Usually I'm more comfortable with about 17 to 18 backups. So this one goes a little more light and probably tries to keep hands that are pretty aggressive. So usually if you want to play something like a 3 CP backup that searches, then you have to go ahead and pitch a card to hopefully find a better card. And this deck has so many effective forwards that are good enough threats for you to go in with that it doesn't really need to search out a specific one, except for a few such as Eald'narche for the Paradise Special, or Zangan to search out for Tifa for the Falcon Special. Next up, we've got Mion. So she's mostly here in order to be able to replay your sages and give you guys haste. Next up, we've got Ninja. So instead of having to delve so much into putting a bunch of fire cards in an unblockable deck, Jenny decided to put in Ninja, which can work as a pseudo 1-turn red mage that you don't have to pay extra CP in order to activate. Next up, we've got Ranger. So being able to take care of those troublesome green dragons that like to cost less than 3 CP and count as a forward if they want to, and happen to be 7,000 power, Ranger will be able to take those out. Next up, we've got Sage to give your forwards haste. Thief to work kind of like that Opus 3 Winsdane, to be able to pick a card out from your opponent's hand, especially if you think that if you want to see if the path is clear for you to play more forwards and to go for the kill. Sometimes people like to hold back and stabilize by doing a board wipe. With Thief, you'll be able to pick that card right out of their hand and see if you can go for the kill. No-no is a key part of this deck. Having so many small forwards go in for damage or going for attacks, you'll be able to reactivate your backups so that first main phase you play a forward. Hopefully you have Godot on the field, attack with him, give your new forward haste, and reactivate your backups and be able to play another forward on the second main phase. With Zangan, you can play him first turn if you want to get that Tifa and to go in for some quick points of early damage, but otherwise I think you really want to use them so that in case of emergency break glass kind of thing, where you'll play out that Zangan if you already have a 5 CP Tifa on the field and you have a couple of forwards that are of cost 3 or less and be able, or that have that can be blocked by forwards of cost 4 or more, and then you use that special and you go in for the last few points of damage to finish the game. Going over some monsters, Goblin is card advantage and haste. Spicelian will be able to get most of your forwards to be unblockable. And last but not least, we've got Grenade to take care of some of those pesky forwards that your opponent might try to put down early game to block some of your smaller guys. So since most of them cannot be blocked by forwards of cost 3 or more or 4 or more, a grenade might be effective enough to take care of that first one and to put a huge enough roadblock and push you far ahead enough that your opponent might not be able to catch up. So hopefully you like this deck. It's actually looks like a lot of fun. I actually wanted to go over a deck that was showcasing Paradise. Everybody was really excited about Eald'narche and Paradise. Hopefully you get to try out this deck, take it for a spin and have some fun with it. Being able to do all kind of unblockable and Paradise fun seems like a great time. So if you haven't done so yet, go ahead and subscribe so that you can be entered to win this lightning plushie. But if you don't want this one, you can always ask to get the Horizon Canopy instead. And if you have any comments or questions, feel free to add them down below, and we'll catch you next time.